Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And we had another guest cancellation today, and I'm kind of glad that we did. Just because Jody Lynn and I were chatting before we got started, and I think we're going to end up with a better topic than we would have had with a guest, to be totally blunt.
Woohoo!
I mean, unbelievable. This has been, for you, Jody Lynn, last week, and for me today, the stuff that has been going on, well, first of all, it reinforces what we already knew, but we need reinforcement, right? I mean, We're human beings. We need to have these reinforcements. But there have been reinforcements about you really can trust. You really can let the universe handle. And when it does, it handles it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a little bit surprisingly.
Right? And it's such a human thing to want to hold and control and know and be part of all of the steps and everything like that. And, even though this is something that I teach on, letting go of the attachment of how it happens, particularly when it comes to money, this is something that I am learning and relearning at deeper levels in all areas of my life over and over and over again. Because the more that I lean into this premise of faith that, that everything will work out and that I don't have to know all of the details, I just have to be the conduit, the more things flood in and things that I never would have imagined on my own. I just didn't have the capacity to see that one coming, and it worked out so beautifully.
Well, we'll get into some of these details. The way you said that reminded me of a line from one of the Richard Bach books. Have you ever read any of the Richard Bach books?
No.
He's best known for Jonathan Livingston Seagull. That was the one novel that kind of got everybody's attention back in the 60s. And then he followed that up with another book that I think is one of the best law of attraction books ever written. And in fact, Louis D'Souza and Louis does the Monday shows with me, have agreed that it's one of the most underrated law of attraction books in existence.
I've never even heard of it.
It's fabulous. It was a bestseller. It did great in its day, but that was about 50 years ago, so it's been a while. But Illusions, check it out. Illusions by Richard Bach. One of the lines from that book just hits this perfectly. Learning is remembering what you already know.
Isn't that the truth?
Right?
Yeah. Because we have access to all of the information. It's all there. We have access to all of it. So, and I heard, we've talked about it on the show before. I'd heard somewhere that, in, your skin, whatever, every piece or particle of you, there's in your DNA, there's information. It's kind of like storage drives. So the entire data collection of all that ever has been, all that ever will be, would be technically, with that theory, stored within you.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's actually part of a larger quote now that I think about it. The full quote is, learning is remembering what you already know. Doing is demonstrating that you know it. And teaching is sharing what you know with others. And we are all learners, doers, and teachers.
Yeah.
So Isn't that good?
Yeah, it is so good. I wrote that down. I'm going to get that book.
It's a great book for another reason. How many law of attraction books do you know that are fictional stories?
I can't think of any.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a good story too. It's a fun read. You'll read it in one night. It won't take you very long because you'll be just so, you'll be hooked into it.
Yeah.
I love
those kind of books.
I won't give you any spoilers, but essentially it's the story of a guy who comes to Earth as the next Messiah, realizes what the job is all about, says, I don't want to go through all that, and quits.
Yeah. Very relatable, right?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Nope. I remember having I remember having a moment just like that in this lifetime where I was realizing the expanse of the mission that I'm here to be a part of and complete in this lifetime. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do it. And I remember it's so interesting because this happened quite a few years back. And I remember sitting there in my higher self. It was the first time that it had really happened in this manner. Wow. I started like channeling and, whatever, right? And it would come in words and sometimes pictures. But this time it was like, unlike any other experience I had ever had. I had my higher self. I was driving and she like dropped into like the screen in front of me while I was driving. So I could see like the road in front of me and her sitting there in this big green chair, like that was like a big leather, like lounger chair. And she's like sitting there and she looks to her right and there's like a red, like exit button, like James Bond car thing, and she opens the case and like hovers over it, like hovers over the button, like, so you don't want to do this? Like again? I was like, oh shit, no, stop. I'm just scared. I don't know.
Are you telling me that this was a non-physical being deliberately setting you up for that potential car accident? Because that's what it sounds like.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I didn't think that far until this moment, but I was like, I saw her in front of me on the screen of my mind so clear. I had never seen her appear this way. And I knew right away that it was my higher self. And I was like, oh, okay. And she looked, irritated, just like bored, whatever. And she had come in and I was having a conversation with someone else on the phone. And I started telling them like, I'm seeing her here in front of me. And I was talking about like, I just don't want to do anything. I just don't want to do anything. I just don't feel like that was the conversation. And she just like looked at me square in the eyes and was like, really? You're going to quit again? I can exit.
Again, the again part, that really gets you, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've done this before. And it came out in later channelings that I had done this in a few different lifetimes where I had chose, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. And she was like, it's time. Now is the time. Like if you're going to, just for lack of a better term, piss away the rest of this life that you've been given, I'm going to exit too. Like I don't need to watch this another time. Like, see you later. It was so impactful.
How interesting that a spirit guide says, okay, you gonna throw in the towel, I'm gonna throw in the towel.
Right? I needed that like staunch reality check.
Right.
And maybe until you said like getting you ready for the potential car accident, like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like,
yeah,
what if I would have said, no, I'm not ready to do this? Like she presses the red button and I don't know.
Because you're obviously, you're driving down the road and you have a distraction directly in front of you. What better way to set yourself up,
Right?
Wow.
Yes.
Holy cow. You gotta be careful with these non-physical beings, I tell you.
Well, this is why I learned how to channel so that I could turn it on and turn it off and I could have more control with this because I was someone who didn't learn the etiquette, the precautions, the safety things that go into channeling. I just started doing it naturally because everyone has the ability to. So I started leaning into that, just like this conversation and learning and, leaning into more of that and things would come, but they would come all the time. So my channel was always open. I had no rules or boundaries with that, other side of the world. And that's at that time, that's why she could appear at that moment. Now, just because I have rules doesn't mean that I don't feel or sense my higher self or other beings or whatever, but I have a boundary. Like I'm not available to have a conversation with you until this and this and this happens. And I set myself up. And when I channel, I do the exact same like protocol every time.
You have office hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, that's good. I love that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, yeah, I don't want to die in a car accident.
Right, yeah.
Very,
other things to do here. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still human. So
right.
I got to play the human game too at the same time.
About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was telling you this earlier before we got started. About 3 to 4 weeks ago, I had a guest on the show, Tony Van Schaik, who created I think it was a $3 billion business in hair care products.
Wow.
All natural hair care products.
Wow.
And in fact, she sent me a basket of them, and they're really good, by the way. Really, really, really good. They're a little pricey.
Write that down later.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. I mean, they are a little pricey, I think, because they run an affiliate program, multi-level kind of thing. But nevertheless, the products are really, really good. I don't use shampoos a lot, but I use their shampoo. Oh my God, my hair came out fabulous. Really, really
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah. Like, oh, geez, I like this. And the thing I kept telling her during the show was, I gave up using shampoos because I wanted to be the only male in my family who didn't lose his hair, which by the way is what happened because I knew how, caustic the shampoos are.
Do they have hair regrowth?
They can't say that.
Oh.
For legal reasons, but they do have a product that I've been trying to just, cause there's like little spots that have had a little loss in, and I can't say it's a scientific test. I think I've been regrowing a little hair.
I didn't know that little tidbit that regular shampoo is so caustic that you.
Oh, it's got all kinds of nasty chemicals in it. Yeah.
Well, I've started to learn just as of recently. There's a lot of chemicals and a lot of things that I did not know about.
Yeah.
So looking for a natural alternative, but I know my husband is thinning on the top and it bothers him. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pass it along. I'll give you that information. But and by the way, I am a person who doesn't like perfumes and scents in shampoos and body washes and all this other kind of stuff. And this one has one. I actually like it.
Really? Because it's not artificial?
I guess. Because it you're right. It doesn't smell fake.
Yeah.
You can always tell,
Yep.
It smells like, oh, that's just it. Like a real coffee smells good because it's got that coffee smell to it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was one of these, I know there's a coffee substitute. I can't think what it's called, and it just don't want to have anything to do with it. But the real stuff smells like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the coffee smell.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to smell like coffee, but this has sort of like a honey and heather type of smell to it. So very, very pleasant.
Cool.
Very, very pleasant. Yeah. So anyway, long story. That's the long way around. After we did the show, she was asking me what's going on with me. She did what a number of guests do when they appear on the show. They say, "This is great. I loved it. What can I do to help you?" And I'm always taken aback on that one because I never have an answer ready. It's not like that's not why I'm doing the show.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, you did the show. Thank you for that. It's usually what my answer is. And for some reason, I told her about this project that I came up with the idea about 2 years ago. The basic idea, I mentioned it before on the podcast, basic idea is that Facebook group admins do all this work. Most of them don't get paid. Some of them have figured out ways to monetize, but most of them don't make any money. And Facebook basically makes them clean up their messes because Facebook does such a terrible job of filtering out the bad actors. Plus they have to actually build their groups and, Facebook makes all the money. And, it's really a nasty kind of scene from that perspective. From another perspective, it's, they're creating groups on topics that they care about. So that's the good side. But I always felt Facebook was kind of sleazing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some way that we could actually reward the admins for what they're doing? Especially as I run some groups too. It'd be nice to have a little reward for what I'm doing. I'm not looking to make a living from it, but just something, And I gave it thought, and I said, well, why doesn't Facebook advertise in groups? And then it finally dawned on me. The reason they don't advertise in groups is that's their way of justifying that the group belongs to the admin. The admin created it in the first place. And then the admins run it, and so it's their group. Now, Facebook does take the data from all that and use it to sell ads to the timeline of the individual Facebook users, but they don't actually put ads in the Facebook groups. And if you go to Facebook's rules about, is it okay to do sell your own advertising? They're vague about it. They're vague about a lot of things. Basically they want to be able to say, that was against the rules whenever they feel like it. That's kind of what it amounts to. So I was studying it carefully and trying to figure out, okay, what would they not feel good about? What would they be okay with? And came up with the idea that I could offer a way for an admin to advertise by the admin essentially sharing the post of the business that was advertising. So that would be the advertisement, so to speak, and then they get paid for that.
Yeah.
Well, that would require some software to run all that, because you don't want to make the admins do all that work. At the most, you want them to say yes or no, and then they're done,
Yeah.
So software needed for that. I've been through 3 sets of developers so far. Every single one of them has totally effed up. Which, by the way, this is a really interesting thing. The group that Tony runs, Tony was the guest, right? The group that Tony runs is called the Effing Simple Team. So, there seems like a little connection going on there, right? Well, long story short, I had a meeting with her guy who heads all of her IT stuff, and with her I'm not sure what to call her right hand, Kelly, who basically runs a lot of her admin for her. And between the two of them, I'm pretty sure we're going to end up doing a deal where they're going to become my development team.
Cool.
Totally out of the blue. So now, coming back to what you said earlier about how we hang on to things, I had fired my last developer last month, and I said, I'm just going to be done with this for a bit. I mean, Tony said maybe she could do something. I'll wait to see what happens with that. I got other things to worry about. I'll just kind of let this whole thing go. Feeding right into exactly what you just said. So there's an example of what happens when you let go.
Mm-hmm. You'll have space for other things to come in.
And that's been an ongoing theme, by the way. I mean, everybody knows what I went through over the last 6-7 months, the divorce and all the stuff that goes along with that. But most recently, I bought Louise out on the gardening business, and I'm running that for her. Now, this is the time of year where it's the busiest time of year.
Yeah.
Jody Lynn, I'm putting in an hour or 2 a day. I have such a good team in place. I don't have to do all that much. I mean, there are a couple of days. Well, some of it, some days I've had to put in more than that, just because you know what it's like when you establish a new corporate identity. There's a lot of stuff you have to do.
Yeah.
In addition to just, filing for the LLC, you have to, there's just different relationships, things you have to do. So I've been ironing all that stuff out. But if you take that away, because that's not going to be ongoing, and limit it down to the stuff that's day to day, it's about an hour or 2 a day.
That's amazing.
And with the other stuff, I mean, I'm basically getting everything done in the morning, so I have my afternoons off. I've never had my afternoons off.
Wow.
What? Huh?
What do you do with yourself?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the question I've been trying to answer. What do I want to do with this newfound time? And it's going to be increasing rather than decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about letting go. Here's one of the interesting things that happens when you let go. You get your wish.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's such a mind thing to get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm putting it down. I'm letting it go. Whatever happens, happens. And it feels different with different topics. Like some things are way harder to let go of than other things. And that's totally dependent on the individual and I guess how much energy you've put into said thing or whatever it may be. But it's interesting, how this lesson keeps showing up in my life of letting go and being the conduit. And I had a very similar experience over the last several weeks too, where
really.
Yeah. I just, I haven't really been on social media in the last 8 months.
Good for you. That's actually a good thing in many ways.
Yeah. I haven't felt called to talk about my coaching business and my brokerage business kind of got busier. And so I was, spending time with that. I have a project that I'm working on, a research project that I love to research. So I've been kind of leaning into those things and just kind of putting the coaching business on the back burner.
Okay.
And then I started to have these downloads of, Abundance Conscious in Nature series. And feeling super called to have events in nature. And then my parents who live down the road, they have a little ghost town for the family in the back 40. And, that's where my husband and I got married. That's, where I had my 30th birthday bash way back in the day. We have family reunions there. Every Thanksgiving is there. So we do lots of parties there. My family is all about bringing people together. So I feel over this last couple of months, I feel this direct pull to do something with community and do something with food, which is really interesting because that's kind of coming out of left field. I mean, we have a market garden business, but it was only like last year that I had decided that, hey, I kind of like this gardening thing before I hated it. You know, I had to like convince myself that it was cool and I liked doing it. Like before it was like, God, I hate waiting. And, you know, I'm still not particularly fond of it, but I have a new relationship with all of that. And so I feel called to do things with food, like create our own food bank, like real food bank. Believe it or not, the food bank that is closest to where we live, actually several of them. There's only one location in like 100 kilometers or probably like 250 kilometers that will take our vegetables.
Really?
Yeah. Which is so freaking sad. I mean, like we can't.
Because it's organic?
No. Because it didn't come from a supermarket.
Oh, jeez.
So we'll have like all of these vegetables and it's too late to sell them because by the time that, you know, we put them on Facebook or however we're going to sell them, like we don't have, you know, proper, the company needs a little bit of work on the marketing and distribution side of things and, you know, whatever. It's kind of been a bane of my existence for a while. In that regard.
To iron out is what, that's the way I think about it. It's ironing out the wrinkles. You got some wrinkles left.
Exactly. We've got some wrinkles in that business and that's okay. You know, whatever that will get sorted. I have lots of ideas dropping in for that now, but, it was so disheartening last year to have, you know, all of these tomatoes. Like we had hundreds of pounds of tomatoes. Wow. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of tomatoes and they were all green. They didn't ripen. They needed more time and it was starting to freeze. So, you know, a farmer's way is you put them in a dark place and they will ripen. You know, just give them some time, but we don't have the space for hundreds and hundreds of pounds of tomatoes and the food bank wouldn't take them.
Wow.
Yeah. And it wouldn't take them just because we're not a grocery store. And that was so disheartening. So I feel this pull to like create my own food bank, like create my own non-for-profit, like create my own retreat space, do retreats, all of these things. So like it felt like all of these balls got thrown up in the air of like ideas that are really exciting and I'm passionate about them and I want to bring them to life. And over the last couple of weeks, just things have been clicking. We were like, okay. Right. We made a decision that we were actually going to do the retreat space. We were going to build it out. And my dad has been waiting for me to make this decision for a long time. Like he's thought about it. He wants to leave a legacy of community and bringing people together. And he doesn't have the energy, or the business planning experience to put the plan together. The bringing people together, he's really great at that, but he didn't know how to put the business side of things together. So he's been asking me to do that. And I finally said, yes, I want to do this. Let's go. And then like things just literally falling out of the sky. We needed wash cars, so bathrooms that had running water and running toilets and, you know, not just outhouses. And all of a sudden, bam, we find that on, you know, Facebook Marketplace for a steal of a deal. Then like wood, that came out of Facebook Marketplace for a steal of a deal. Then people donated stuff. Then, you know, like we wanted to do yurts for the retreat that I want to put on. And all of a sudden, like I was on Alibaba and then I was on Amazon and all the prices came through and everything just seems to be coming through. But last week I felt this incredible amount of overwhelm. Like, oh my gosh, I've literally thrown like a pit of balls in the air and I'm like, oh God, I don't know how to juggle. I don't know how I'm going to hold all of this. There's line items for things. And one of my really good friends reminded me, Jody, you are just the conduit. It moves through you. And what that conversation did for me was this realization of I had this belief system tied to holding all of this. I must hold all of this or I will lose it. I will lose control. I will lose it. So I was holding all of it and I was suffocating all of it at the same time. And when I decided, no, I'm just the conduit and the people, the resources, the information, whatever it is I need to execute will fall in line when I let go of that belief system and I allow myself just to be the conduit to bring it to this earth. Then it started moving even faster. This week has been like, boom, like we've got the retreat ready to go for August. I have other events ready to go for September. Everything is just falling into place faster than I thought would have been possible.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That sounds really, really great. And what you described in terms of the holding on part, anybody who's ever started a business knows that feeling.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care who your mentors are. I don't care what your business model is. I don't care what you're selling. It makes no difference what everybody has always experienced that who's ever started a business. And it can be an overwhelming feeling. Yeah. And it can be something that you have to learn more than once. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 times. It can take a while before you finally get through it.
Yes.
But boy, it's worthwhile to get through it. I can tell you that, right?
Absolutely. I used to be such a control freak. Like I needed to know details of everything and I had a lot of trust issues. That's what was underneath the control. I don't trust anybody. That's who I was. Yeah. And so I must control everything. And I suffocated so much because there's only so much you can hold on to yourself. You need to attract the people to help support and deliver whatever it is, your visions of whatever you're trying to bring to the world. They were meant to come in and support you. And you're basically saying, no, I'm closing the door. I'm just doing it all by myself because I don't trust anybody. That was a huge lesson.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what that feels like. I know what that's like. And I know what it's also like coming out the other side too, because when you come out the other side, I think your friend described it beautifully. You're a conduit.
Yeah.
You're a conduit for, well, actually you're a bunch of conduits. You're not just one.
Yeah.
You're conduits all over, you're a conduit to so many different people and situations all the time.
Yeah.
So, and how interesting too, because you're trying to do a food bank and that came out of a gardening thing and you're not really crazy about gardening, although you're developing a love for it. And here I am buying out a gardening business from my ex. And I can't stand working in the yard or in a garden, but I know how to run a business. And I think actually it helps us to come from that viewpoint. I'll speak for myself. I think it helps me because since I really don't have this driving desire to go do the gardening myself, it's really easy for me to delegate. It's not hard. There's nothing for me to hang on to because I don't want to hear, please take it. I don't want to do those jobs. It's like delegating is very simple. And ultimately delegating becomes what you talked about. It becomes being the conduit. Mm-hmm. Here it is, passing it off to you, passing it off to you, passing it off to you. Okay, here you go, here you go, here you go, 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 go.
Yeah. And the more you can flow through yourself, the faster things go and the more things that, seem to get accomplished. For me, in realizing that belief system that I don't need to hold all of it, what was a big aha moment in that moment of that realizing that belief system was sitting there and I was holding on to it, was also like the actual picture of a conduit, like a wire and energy moving through it. And I realized in terms of an actual wire, energy doesn't get stuck in there, or if it did, probably bad things are going to happen. It's not going to function properly, maybe a fire, whatever. It's going to short out. I'm not an electrician, my husband is, but I don't know what would happen in that regard. But the other thing was it's not meant to get stuck.
Right.
And I could see that really clearly, but I could also see this realization of there's no loss there because energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. So it's just a constant movement, this dance of energy, of different energies looping through. And it was like, I don't have to hold all the balls in the air. I don't have to toss them up. I can allow things to move through me and I'm not losing anything because nothing can be created or destroyed. I'm just the conduit. I'm just moving the energy. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Weight lifted off my shoulders. There's no longer random balls in the air that were ready to fall on me.
Yeah.
It was like the pressure just melted and I was able to just hone in on, okay, this is next, and just follow my intuition and my guidance on where do I go from here.
I'm going to throw something out there and see what you think of it. And the reason I'm doing this is because of what you expressed there, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. That's a Newtonian law. It's one of the 3 laws of Newtonian physics. And the idea basically permeates all of science. I mean, it's everywhere. It was proposed to me by another channeler, David Strickle, who you met.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't David who proposed it. It was the stream that proposed it to me. That they didn't say it directly. They said it indirectly, but they hinted that wasn't true, that energy can be created. And so I followed up on it with them and, pinned them down. Cause I mean, you know how it is with channeled entities. Any time that you get messages, it could be fairly vague. So it's kind of hard to say, well, what are they really saying here? So I was kind of, really pinning them down on it. And I got them to say something. I don't remember exactly what they said. And so I decided to turn around and summarize it and saying, so essentially what you're saying is that as expansion happens, expansion is an increase in the total quantity of energy in the universe. And there was a pause and they said yes. So if we take what they're saying to be true, then not only can energy be created, but it's being created all the time.
Yeah. And I actually believe that because I feel that expansiveness, that expansion. Like as soon as I let go, and I'm sure you probably felt this too, like I felt like I got bigger, like there was room that was created here that I could hold more, even though I wasn't holding it, but I could funnel through more, if that makes sense. I totally believe that.
Well, the more I've thought about that, I heard that from the stream about a year ago here on the show, give or take about a year ago. And I've given it a lot of thought since then. I even mentioned it a few times here on the show as well. And the more that I've thought about it, the more I realize it makes certain things in our, quote, real lives, unquote, funny. For instance, anybody who ever talks about an energy crisis, I have to stop myself from bursting out laughing. Because what goes through my head is, yeah, good luck with that one. Every thought that we have creates new energy.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I think there's a bunch of lies throughout all of history. We don't have to get into all the conspiracies that I think could possibly be true because we'd be here all day. But I think it's fascinating that, there's certain things in our world that were claimed to be very scarce. Fossil fuels. Their name sounds like dinosaur bones. And when you read on the history of that, it was very intentional because to create a price war or drive prices up, you have to have a high demand and a low supply. They did this with diamonds. Or at least a limited supply. Or a limited supply. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they did this with diamonds. So I highly doubt that they didn't do it with other natural resources that are out there. But it's so interesting because even though you look at like the world and water, I think it's only like 1% that is actually drinkable.
Yeah.
Maybe 2%, but it's like a very low amount. How come we're not freaking out about that?
Some people are. There's a lot of talk lately about water shortages coming up in the next few years. There's huge amounts of talk about that.
But I also think that is probably a lie too.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it's a lie. Here's the thing that's really interesting. I think there are a lot of things that we say are lies that aren't really lies. Yeah. I think I'll call them malintentions. And the reason they're malintentions is because they're intentions based on fear. Not based on evilness. Based on, I'm scared. Like what you were describing before, for the entrepreneur, he's got to hold on to everything. Yeah. That's a fear. If you don't hold on to everything, everything's going to fall apart. All the plates are going to come crashing down, all that kind of stuff. Well, I think the same thing is true for these other things. I mean, people who are claiming that we're going to have water shortages, and a lot of the claims are tied to climate change. So climate change is going to create water shortages. It's fear. It's all fear. Yeah. And they don't really grasp that their own fear is what's creating the situation.
Yep.
That's part of the learning process. I mean, we all go through them, right? It doesn't matter what the topic is. We all go through these learning processes of dealing with, I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Ah!
Chicken Little. Yeah.
And then we find out, the sky doesn't actually fall if we just let go.
Yeah, if you just let go, it doesn't fall. I didn't die. I'm okay.
And by the way, it doesn't mean that these problems don't exist. They do exist.
Yeah.
They definitely exist. Of course, the big question is where they come from. They came from thinking, well, there's this big problem going. You keep feeding into the problem, you're going to get more and more problems.
Well, yeah. And I mean, our solutions are also tied to that fear.
Absolutely.
And a lot of other fears. And, you know, I'm not one to publicly discuss climate change because I may have some opinions that aren't,
politically correct.
Yep. That's the word I'm looking for. But I start looking at the world and some of these problems that we're supposedly having, or that the impacts that we're having. And I'm not saying that we don't have an impact on the environment. I do think that we can do better. And it also drives me up the wall that in a lot of places in the United States and maybe not officially in Canada, for water, for example, you can't save your own rainwater. Like,
okay, I hadn't
so
heard that
you
one,
could
but
support
all right.
your family. Like, what? Like, so we're looking at doing, like one of the things that I would love to do when we design and build our dream home is to have, for the summer months, obviously it's like a barren, frozen tundra here in the winter. So it's ice, not water. But in the summertime, why not use the rainwater that we're collecting to be the thing that goes through the shower and goes through the toilets and things like that, and allow ourselves to recycle this water over and over and over again to get the most use out of it. I mean, we collect all of the rainwater that we can for our vegetable gardens because our rainwater is much better than city water for the vegetables, which, you know, that's a whole nother thing right there. But when I start looking at some of these processes of like, I want to make an impact on the environment and do better, treat the environment that I'm in better, well, use Mother Nature. And then you run up against small, weird things like that. Like, no, you're not allowed to use your rainwater. What?
Yeah, well, I never worry about regulations like that one because it's clearly impossible to enforce something like that one. So there's no reason to get upset about it. Just,
that's true.
There are a number of things that get proposed that the people proposing them clearly have no idea how enforcement works. So
that's another thing, right?
I mean, you kind of have to, that's where reality is actually helpful. Reality feeds you information. Like, okay, so there's this thing going on, but honestly, you don't have to freak out about it. You know, like one of the latest things to be freaking out about that certain people are freaking out about in this country is the proposal to eliminate using natural gas to cook with in people's homes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there are not forces that are trying to do that. I'm sure there are. I just don't worry about them. And when somebody hears me say that, they give me this quizzical look like, why not? And I said, this country gets 40% of its energy from natural gas. How do you think they're going to eliminate all that without replacing it? You can't just say ban. You have to have another way to provide energy, or you're going to lose the entire voter bloc that got you into office in the first place.
Yes.
You know, so why are we freaking out about this again? Remind me. I don't seem to remember here.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
It doesn't.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. But I agree with you. Like, okay, what's the likelihood that they're going to actually do some of these things? Well, in that scenario, it's not highly likely because what are they going to replace it with? There's some places in the United States where the electricity grid is so weak that they already have brownouts. And like there's certain states that you can't buy certain types of equipment like computers or whatever. And I don't know enough about it, but I have heard those things. So
I wasn't aware of it, but okay.
Yeah. Apparently that's a thing. So how are they going to put everything on the electrical system without a massive, massive upgrade? One that would take
also
a
gets
long
me
time.
too. Anything that's energy related, electricity driven, that specific kind of energy. Any kind of complaint about it, left, right, center, I don't care where the complaint is coming from. I always give it a little bit of a smile. Like, the left complains that there's too much energy being created that creates a carbon effect. And the right complains that the left is complaining too much and they really need to unlock these other kinds of energies, but they're not, so they're creating energy crisis over there. And my answer to all of them is, what have you been doing lately to create alternative energy?
Yeah.
Because none of you guys are doing it as far as I can tell. I mean, they're all just complaining and pointing fingers.
Yeah.
The simple solution is just create better energy. And this is not this is not rocket science. Well, even rocket science would help with that. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I met an interesting fella the other day. We bought some horseradish of a guy that was selling it on the Facebook buy and sell or something. And, you know, horseradish, we want to make a patch that says like horseradish heaven. We're like building a pharmacy, but like an FRAMC, like all herbs and stuff like that. So we went there and like, he's got like a wood burning stove outside and he's got like some contraption on a pole and it looks cool. And so we start talking to him and he tells us about how he raised his kids and how he took the natural gas meter out of his house. He lives right in the middle of the city, which is interesting that he did all of this right in the middle of the city.
Whatever.
Yep. Quite daring. They did not like it, obviously. They being like the natural gas company, the city, you know, whatever, because he was different. But
not to mention the people who are complaining about air pollution and saving resources and all that kind of. I mean, he's got everybody against him.
Yeah, absolutely. His yard looks like a hot mess because he's got wood back there. He doesn't have a perfect manicured yard. Yeah, so they were all.
Does he have any friends left at all? I'm just kind of curious.
Not so much. Not really. They tried to take all of his wood away from him. Like he really battled the city for all of this, but he was telling us like about energy and energy creation. And he was just talking about, you know, when you're a part of the process, you're not just like turning a switch to turn on your heat or, you know, whatever, right? Clicking up a dial or it just automatically comes on. But when you're physically a part of the process, you appreciate it so much more. And he said that his kids had pedal vision. And I was like, pedal vision? Like,
yeah,
what?
I've heard of that.
Yeah. He said, oh, well, you know, they got an hour a day or something or half an hour a day of television. They could watch, you know, television either with the family or on their own or whatever. But if they wanted more than that half an hour or hour that he allotted them, they would have to pedal for it. So they would get on the stationary bike and he'd be like, okay, this many revolutions. And I don't know how he captured the energy, maybe a battery storage facility converter. No idea. But they would have to pedal and to watch TV. So he said it really changed their mindset on what they were watching and whether it was really worth that pedal time that it would take to actually be able to watch those things. It's fascinating. I'm
also amused. I personally love solar and wind power. I think they have all kinds of potential. And the right wing just goes crazy about that, and I don't quite understand why they're going crazy. The left also goes crazy in their own way. They're the ones that really intrigue me because they're the ones who tend to say, well, we need more solar and we need more wind. But they're also the ones that are most likely to put regulations in place to prevent it. Like, what? Wait, hold on here. Will you please explain to me? I thought you wanted this stuff. What's going on? So it just illustrates there's so many different ways we can get frustrated about this.
Yes.
But we can also ask ourselves, well, what's it going to take for us to kind of do what that guy did and just go ahead? You know, just put up the solar panel, just put up the wind thing. I mean, it's not like the technology isn't available. We can just start doing it, you know? Interesting things are happening here in New England. People are actually privately setting up solar farms.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they're quite, I mean, they run into a lot of resistances. You have to get all kinds of town permits. There's all this other kind of stuff that goes on, but they're doing it. In fact, there was one project that went in that, right in this town where I live, generated a lot of controversy. This town had, back in the day, it had a lot of tobacco growing. And the tobacco growing, the tobacco fields are still owned by, I think, R.J. Reynolds, but they're fallow. They aren't really doing anything with them. And they've got the old tobacco growing houses that are rotting away on the properties and so forth. And one of those properties got bought up by a developer who wanted to turn it into a solar farm and got all kinds of resistance from the locals who, by the way, this is a relatively liberal town. You know, so you had that dynamic going on, like, you know, do as I say, not as I do, that kind of a thing. It finally did go
solar
through.
farms, but not here.
Yeah, not here. Yeah, everywhere else. I don't quite understand that one either. But anyway, he finally got it in place and nobody's complaining. Everything just kind of settled down. And we now have a pretty good sized solar array here in town where there used to be tobacco fields. What an upgrade.
Right?
I love it.
Why not utilize that land for a purpose?
Yeah.
You know,
it doesn't cause cancer, by the way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know enough about solar. Even though I have like a million electricians in my family. But the only thing that I have really heard, and it's secondhand knowledge, was that it just wasn't as efficient. But I know that they have come a long way. So I'm not really against solar, but I'd like to learn more information about it and understand for our climate, because I think there's a climate dependency too, you know, like when we have way less sun, in the winter months when we only get a couple of hours where it's really cloudy, like how does that impact it? And the efficiency and how long do the batteries last? That being said, I have 2 giant solar panels sitting on my driveway right now because we're converting one of our greenhouses to run on solar energy because we need to do something to be able to start the growing season sooner. And it's either inside with electricity, which is very expensive here everywhere, you know, or find an alternative. So we've been looking into alternatives like solar, like, there's other ones that I can't recall what all of their names are, but utilizing what the earth is already giving us to create some of these things like wind generation, kind of like a windmill or whatever they're called, wind farm sort of thing, but to run the fans in our greenhouse. I said, why can't you just like put like a propeller on top of like the greenhouse and like let the wind catch it and then like it drives some other belt thingy? Like, can't you do that? My husband's super mechanically inclined. Like, he's an electrician. He's also very smart when it comes to like how things go together. So I just say these things and he's like, yeah, great idea. Well, that's this and that. And he fills in the blanks. But we're looking at all of those things too, so that we could provide more vegetables, not only for ourselves, but our community.
And for those people, there's another fear group going on. The ones who are saying it's not efficient. The first question I have to ask them is efficient by what standard? And the second question I have to ask them is who cares? Why does it so matter? We can only use the energy form that is the most efficient one and we can't use any others?
No. Well, I mean, like,
what's the point of the whole efficiency argument? I don't quite get that one.
Yeah, I think the efficiency argument comes into play where I've heard it is with the cost. So the cost of the panels and the batteries and like all of the whole setup. I don't know what setup is, but the cost of the setup versus how much you're going to extract out of it. So the difference, and I don't know if it's the same in the States as it is here in Canada, but once you have a power line already, they're charging you that transmission and distribution, like the fees, regardless of whether you have anything coming in or not. There's still like I think my last bill was $155 in these bills, these fees. My actual energy consumption was 90 or 80 or something like that. Ridiculous. And I don't know if this is 100% true anymore, but for a long time, we weren't allowed to dump back onto the grid. So that power would just go to these energy companies for free, or I don't actually know what would happen with them. So I've only heard the efficiency argument in relation to the cost of setup and maintenance of said system.
And once again, I would say that the argument is ridiculous. And the reason I say it's ridiculous is because what they're presuming is that the only kind of efficient operation is the one that comes in at the lowest cost, which is another way of saying that everything should sell at the same price. But that's not the way life works.
No.
All you have to do is go onto eBay and you can see the same item selling at 500 different prices.
Yes.
You know, so that means that 499 of them are wrong.
Not if somebody's willing to pay it.
Yeah. So what's the freaking point of the efficiency argument? Well, the point is to basically create a straw man that says, well, it's not the lowest price, so therefore we can't do it. Bullshit. Yeah. That's just bull. That's nonsense. And it's fear driven. It's just pure fear.
You're right. And I think a lot of narratives, I'll say it that way, are fear driven. And, you know, we've been ingrained into this life where we're so busy all the time that we don't look into things. A lot of people just take it at face value. Oh gosh, there's an energy crisis. Oh God, we're going to run out of water. Oh God, climate change. Oh God, like, I mean, the Statue of Liberty is going to sink into the ocean and be gone.
I wondered what happened to that.
Right. You know, but it's like, okay, well, let's take a wide view on all of the perspectives without judgment, or try without judgment to get out of our own, you know, viewpoint perspective and see if another perspective exists, or why all of these things are being said. And when you get to the bottom of it, a lot of it really just comes back to fear.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
The cool part for me is when we decide individually to just go for stuff anyway, regardless of what the fear mongers are saying. Those are the people. I'll put myself and yourself in that group. We're the people who make things happen.
Yeah.
You got the people on the left and the people on the right who are screaming about this, that, and the other thing. And then there's a small minority that says, well, just go do it.
Yeah.
Screw it.
Yeah. We'll ask for like forgiveness after. Is that how that goes?
Well, not even ask for, just go do it. Don't worry about those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
It's law of attraction. If you give your attention to them, you're going to get more of them. Just don't pay any attention to them. Because they're really no different from talking heads on television or social media icons, people who have huge followers. But they're all doing the same thing. They are talking heads that are putting out their messages for the purpose of scaring people into accomplishing some sort of a goal, whether it's selling a piece of merchandise or a service or pushing a political agenda or whatever it is. They're all using fear to drive a result.
Yes.
Ignore them. That's what they do. They're like, they date back to the days of King Arthur. They were the court jesters. That's what they do.
I think my biggest awakening in this seeing that was through COVID over the last 3 years. You know, the narrative was that if you, here in Canada at least, if you weren't vaccinated, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't go to the restaurant. You couldn't fly out of the country. You couldn't leave the country. You couldn't do anything. You'd be sequestered at home. And for me, I said, no, I don't believe that. I'm not buying into the fear of, if I don't do this, then my life is altered, impacted negatively. I'm just going to live my life. And so just to be 100% transparent, I decided that it wasn't for me to get vaccinated. So I didn't. And I still went to restaurants. I still traveled to the United States. I still did anything and everything that I wanted because I didn't buy into that fear narrative. Oh, if you don't do it, then you can't work or you can't do this. No, that's not how I live my life. I live it from a place of possibilities. So I opened up, I surrendered and opened up to what is possible without that fear guiding me.
It's interesting you mentioned this because I'm going to say, it was shortly after the vaccines first came out, like within 3 months of them coming out, something like that.
Yep.
We did a show where we were expressing opinions, not dissimilar to this, you know, what we're doing here. And afterward, I received contacts from 2 different people, one of whom actually left a 1-star rating for the show on Apple Podcasts. And their complaint was that we were not taking vaccination seriously enough, and therefore they couldn't in good conscience continue to listen to the show. And then I got an angry email from somebody who was saying that we're paying far too much attention to the people who are pro-vax and not enough attention to the people who are anti-vax, so they weren't going to listen to the show anymore. So we basically pissed off both sides. So that was a pretty good accomplishment.
I mean, it's so interesting because when you step back and you start looking at some of the law of attraction principles, like when you're looking at something, said subject changes. That was the slit test, right? I mean, this is a perfect example of that how you're observing something, how you're perceiving something, even though it's the exact same show. Even though you've said the exact same word, like the words didn't change, but 2 different complete opposite end spectrums had 2 different experiences with just watching that one show. It just
and the thing that I had to remember was it had nothing to do with what I said.
No.
It had to do with what their preconceptions were.
Yeah.
which made it really easy for me, by the way, to just let go. I didn't really care that I got the 1-star review. I didn't care I got the nasty email. Like, okay, fine. Hey, you believe what you want. You know, other people are listening. I'm doing the podcast because I enjoy it. My co-hosts enjoy it. My guests enjoy it. You know, have fun. Go off and do your thing. It's not going to ruin my day.
No, I won't let it.
And the only reason that I thought of it now was because of the conversation. I hadn't thought of it since then.
Yeah.
I literally just took it out of my consciousness. It's just, nope, sorry, not here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole trick. Just letting go and just saying, you know what? Okay, there are going to be a lot of court gestures, making a lot of funny faces and doing a lot of, comedy and drama and all that kind of stuff. And if I want to, I might go watch one of the theaters or one of the shows or watch a movie along that line. And then, okay, done with that. And I'm just going to go on and do what I was going to do anyway in my life and not worry about these people.
Absolutely. And it's so crazy how we think things have to do with us and they really never ever do. And our perception is so altered or distorted when it comes to what other people are thinking about us.
Which is so easy to do, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all do it, right? I mean, every one of us. I don't care how enlightened you are. We all do it, you know.
Absolutely.
But some of us realize, oh yeah, I don't really have to go there.
No. And the more that you start testing this for yourself, like that letting go, like it has nothing to do with me, or just simply letting go of all of the balls you're trying to hold and finding a new perspective of being the conduit and things moving through you. And the more that you expand, perhaps the more moves through you. You create that new energy. Maybe that's the new thing. You can create new energy, right? Just allowing yourself to keep learning and challenging what you're perceiving in these moments with kindness and grace and compassion for yourself and the other people in the experience, but continuing to learn, and you'll continue to co-create the things that you actually want versus the things that you don't.
So this has been a really good conversation that starts with the original premise of the show, so to speak, of, well, you know, how do I get to where I want to get to? And is it possible? And then you end up at, oh my God, I have all this free time. How did that happen? That's how you get there. That's how you get to the point where all of a sudden you find yourself creating a food bank and you find yourself, you know, finding alternative ways to distribute tomatoes. I mean, you never really, that's not what you were thinking about originally, but that's where you get to.
Yep.
And it happens because of all the letting go.
Yeah. And it's exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Funny thing is, when you let go, you're not hanging on to it anymore. And so it's not there.
No. And your like reaction to it doesn't matter. Like once you let it go, you're like, okay, I'm at peace. If it's meant to be, it will be. And if it's not, that's okay too. Like having that deep sense of peace of whatever. This is an adventure. Imagine going from that, like, I have to hold everything and I'm so overwhelmed and I can't do this anymore, to
that's it.
This is an adventure. I get to experience whatever comes next. Like, let's go. Like, put the thing on the roller coaster. Like, start the roller coaster up. Let's go. That's life. That's what we're meant to do here.
So now I have to just figure out, okay, so what do I want to do with all this extra time I've got?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. What sounds fun? I mean,
looking forward to figuring that one out. Yeah. This is going to be fun. It's going to be really good. Hey, Jody Lynn, we were right. This was definitely the better project of, you know, the better topic than we would have had with a guest. This was perfect. So thank you. I appreciate your contributions, because your contributions were wonderful. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, because we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.